Once upon a time, there was a game designer named Lowe. Mr. Lowe was very famous as one could get before the internet took over, for designing very adult-themed games. His most notable success was with the Leisure Suit Larry series, a series in which the main character Larry is most often found looking for women with which to have the sex. Mr. Lowe had made 5 of these wanton smutfests, when one fateful day he took his daughter to see a movie called Mrs. Doubtfire. He remarks on the fact that the children in the audience were laughing at the slapstick, but there was also times where the adults were laughing at something the kids were too young to get. Thought Mr. Lowe, why isn't there a computer game like this that I could play with my daughter? And thus he began work on Torin's Passage. So dedicated was Mr. Lowe to the parent-child game concept that he had his daughter design a maze that appears in the game, and god damn it, why is there a maze in this game?
Never mind, let's get the obligatory plot dump out the way. The prologue opens on a giant magical garlic pod before focusing on a couple sleeping in what must be the coldest fucking room possible. A mysterious man pours an equally mysterious liquid into a comparatively less mysterious ring. A baby in the centre of the room cries, and a nanny comes to take care of him by taking him outside where it could only be even colder than their bedroom, which has no goddamn walls. Mr. Mysterious pours the contents of his ring into the magic garlic pod, summoning weird garlic ghosts and making the couple all sorts of dead. Having only just realised that a baby outside in the cold is a very dumb idea after it starts raining, the nanny goes back inside. When she sees the ghostly things running rampant around the baby's crib, she thinks twice. Cut to what I assume to be sometime later, and we meet a young farmhand by the name of Torin, who gets sent on an errand by his father. He wants to be a hero and go on adventures and such, something he complains about loudly to his purple pet Boogle, the strange wobbly cat thing who lives in his satchel. Oh Jesus, no! A loud noise turns his head just in time to witness his parents being encased in glass and kidnapped by a tornado, I think. Then this cloaked figure emerges and vaguely hints that a sorceress has taken his parents to the ominous-sounding lands below. Apparently, Torin has an impulse control problem, as he immediately sets off for the lands below to confront this sorceress who may or may not be responsible or even still alive.
And now that our hero has a quest, mere minutes after bemoaning his questlessness and not even questioning the absurdly good timing, we can start the game.
The interface is both pretty basic and kinda complicated at the same time. You need only left click on things to interact with them, and the cursor changes to point out things you can interact with, which is nice. But you've got a load of other stuff at your disposal too. This big dark area is your inventory, and the pedestal thing in the middle is for examining said inventory, with a fancy rotating 3D view which, unfortunately, just reminds me of Urban Runner. The hourglass / question mark button can give you hints, which are bought at the expense of your score. There's also a book which replays past conversations for you, but it's only one line at a time. And this was made in the age before mouse wheels, so it can be a bit of a bollock to use, but still better to have it than not. Then there's this wee arrow thing at the top of the hut, which lets you scroll through an entire scene without actually walking there. This becomes essential later on, and you'll sometimes get a vertical one too, so bear those in mind. Now, it might look like you can control 2 characters judging by those buttons, but that's not exactly the case. Boogle learns to form certain shapes over the course of the game, and clicking his quote-unquote inventory makes those shapes available to you.
Actually, if I can go back to the plot for a second. What the hell is Boogle? They just seem to have dumped this random-ass cat thing on us without telling us why, or even what the hell it's meant to be. And of all the random-ass purple companions, why couldn't it have been this one? As if dumping some Crayola-coloured animal into whatever you're doing is going to make it any better. Isn't that right, Mr. Pinky Pants?
As for how the game is structured, well, that's a bit different too. Torin's initial goal is to get to the lands below, but needless to say, he ends up having to go even further. There's 5 chapters to play through, and the main menu shows them as layers of the planet. It's not 5 episodes crammed together though, there's a full adventure game in here. It just lets you start each chapter whenever the hell you want. The beginning of each chapter gives you a "meanwhile, somewhere else a thing has happened" type of cutscene, and they do a good job of getting you curious about what's really going on. This almost episodic style of gaming was taken from King's Quest VII, which came out the previous year, and shares a similar art style. And it looks pretty good. Cartoony visuals on painted backgrounds, as you can probably tell if you have eyes. Lots of unique animations, and some of the conversations are like mini cutscenes in themselves with multiple camera angles, which is a nice touch. But compared to some of the VGA games that were still coming out that year, Torin's Passage doesn't seem like it takes advantage of the higher SVGA resolution. It's not so much higher detail as it is gradients and divers to fill in the gaps.
I can imagine this being released in VGA and not losing a thing. Yeah, exactly. Still looks good, but, you know, just a thought.
If nothing else, a lower resolution would have meant they could render an FMV larger than just half the screen.
And there's a couple of things about this game that range from annoying to weird to just plain funny.
The annoying comes when Torin transitions to a new screen, because you have to watch him walk that path or climb those stairs, and you either have to turn the game speed up and watch him Benny Hill all the way to his destination, or use this here button to skip straight there. It's an extra annoyance, but without that button, I would have seriously considered just bypassing Chapter 2 entirely. Incidentally, that button also lets you skip cutscenes. The weird comes when you walk into a black and white TV sitcom, and I swear I'm not lying to you about this.
The Bitter Nuts is not filmed before a live audience.
The funny comes when you right-click somewhere and Torin instantly teleports. Useful feature, sure, but it can become unintentionally hilarious.
Being a kids' game, it seems inevitable that comedy was going to be involved, and this ranges from puns to slapstick to very mild innuendo. Also, they're not afraid of breaking the fourth wall for the sake of a good gag. It doesn't insult anybody's intelligence, but you can see the influence a child's sense of humour's had on this. Speaking of, do you remember that maze I talked about? The one that Lowe's daughter designed? Well, of course you do, you've read the script. Now, I thought I would hate this after my experience with Lowe last time round, but it turns out it's not that bad.
You can't use the right click to warp trick here, I mean that would just be cheating. But you can see more than a foot in front of you. In fact, you can scroll the view to see the entire area, and there's no risk of falling into the lava. There's none of that Space Quest 2 tentacle maze nonsense going on here. It's good to see adventure game designers move on from that damn puzzle where you walk into a door and randomly appear in a different... Oh, you fucking bastard! Well, the rest of the game is a nice blend of item rubbing versus straight up puzzle solving, and I appreciate both, especially since the latter can be quite underrepresented in this genre. If that's the kind of thing that appeals to you, look forward to Chapter 3. Most of the puzzles, whatever their type, aren't too bad, but there are one or two situations where you just end up standing there, paralysed with desperate wonder as to what you're meant to do or where you're meant to go next. But really, it's quite hard to get bored.
So it's a good game. There, I finally said it. Lowe had a wealth of adventure game design experience under his belt by this point, and it's nice to see it applied to something that any age group with basic language skills can play. Shut up, you.
That said, I noticed he couldn't resist using the word crap in the script. It's not exactly E for everyone now, is it? Torin's Passage also lets me review one of Lowe's games without having to start reviewing a series from the beginning. Of course, that hasn't stopped me in the past, but I'm trying. The LucasArts adventures of the time stuck fairly rigidly to the player never dies or cannot win rule, and Sierra was veering towards this, but there are still a few ways to die in this game, complete with playfully insulting remarks as per Sierra tradition.
In fact, one death scene has a funny Easter egg. If you decide to... Instead, when you meet... Sorry for the censorship, but Lowe asked me not to tell everybody what it was.
Overall, you've got a nice wee game with some charming humour that's worth a look if you're a fan of the genre and remember being a child at some point.
It's available on GOG.com, so there's no awkward setup to go through, and whilst it's not exactly a must-play, you might be left wondering why I never got those 4 sequels that were planned. Well, okay, well there's that, but why would you put that kind of lawyer in... But no. Yes. Maybe. I'm really not sure. I'll be honest, I don't understand the word you're talking about. Not really. What, even on a Tuesday? Let's see. Well, whatever they want to do with a 10-gallon vat of lube is their business. No, not quite. Yeah, that one. Even on a Tuesday? Yes, that's very funny.